This is a Bandit Radio production.
Long enough to cover the subject and short enough to keep things interesting. Welcome to Out of My League, presented by Bandit Radio. I'm Nick Diaz. I try my best never to speak in hyperbole, but sometimes facts are laid out in front of you and you just can't ignore them. Steve Ensminger retired as LSU's offensive coordinator this morning. He's content with retiring as an old assistant at his alma mater in his hometown. And good for him. But I have a belief that Steve Ensminger is the greatest offensive coordinator in LSU history. And who was the real play caller in 2019? We'll get to that in a minute. The day Les Miles and Cam Cameron were fired, interim head coach Ed Orgeron went up to Steve Ensminger, the tight ends coach, and said, "You're going to call it. You're going to be my offensive coordinator." And Steve Ensminger said, "Bullshit." His response was simple, but it perfectly sums up the man himself. Ensminger didn't want the job, and his reasons were simple. Starting in the late 1980s and all throughout the 90s, Steve Ensminger was one of the hottest play callers and brilliant offensive minds in college football. His offenses broke school records at Louisiana Tech, Georgia, and Texas A&M. But after banging heads with Texas A&M coach R.C. Slocum, and then a poor showing at Clemson, Ensminger decided he was sick and tired of the bullshit politics of the profession, and more importantly, sick and tired of moving his family around. After a year of coaching high school football in West Monroe, he had a long stint as Auburn's and LSU's tight end coach. When asked why take those jobs, Steve always said, "Because nobody fires the tight ends coach," and was content with returning as an old assistant at his alma mater in his hometown, hoping nobody would notice him or bother his family. He took an antiquated offense in the middle of the 2016 season and broke school records in his first game. His only request to Coach O during the season was, "I don't want to do any more damn press conferences." In 2018, 2 years later, Coach O asked Steve to be the full-time offensive coordinator. Reluctant, his family talked him into it, but this time, Steve had to do a press conference, and he chose to do all of this because he knew the Tigers needed him. For those that say, but in 2018, he got shut out by Alabama, at home, in Tiger Stadium. He can't be the greatest coordinator in LSU history. Yeah, well, you know who else got shut out by Alabama at home in Tiger Stadium? Jimbo Fisher, 2002, 31-0. Now, I'll be the first one to say, Steve Ensminger had a rough patch learning the new spread schemes in 2018. I would imagine so. He hadn't designed plays in over 15 years. If you were a plumber and hadn't worked at a job in 15 years, I'd imagine you'd have some rust too. Hell, any job you did. 15 years is a long time. Anyone in the LSU building will tell you that the offense improved at the end of the 2018 season was because Ensminger kicked passing game coordinator Jerry Sullivan to the curve. He knew he had to. Ensminger was the one who told Coach O to hire Joe Brady, a guy who was known for getting coffee for Sean Payton and his Saints staff. Sean Payton, one of the greatest offensive minds in the history of the NFL, even told Coach O, hiring Joe Brady to LSU will be a mistake. As the story goes, Coach O just smiled and told Sean Payton, "You're wrong, it won't be." Coach O trusted Steve Ensminger's evaluation over Sean Payton. Despite what many lazy national media members will tell you, Joe Brady was not the play caller in 2019. Steve Ensminger was. Ask any LSU beat writer, reporter, radio host, former players who sat on the sidelines in practice and in games. They have all publicly stated for over the past 2 years, multiple times, Steve Ensminger was the play caller for the greatest offense in college football history. The play that started it all, 3rd and 17, Austin, Texas. Ed Orgeron had a decision to make. Every LSU coach for the past 125 years would just run the ball, punt, and play defense. And with the eyes of Texas and the entire football world watching, everyone thought the same thing. Same old LSU offense. Run the ball, punt, play defense. Coach O spoke into his headset and said, "Steve, What do you want to do? I think we should run it. Up in the booth, Steve yells back, "Fuck that! Tell Joe to go out there and sling it."
Down to their last timeout. It's 3rd and 17. Don't you think you got to run it here? Use that last timeout. 3rd and 17 is a hard ask.
But first, what can Burrow do with this 3rd and long? Over the middle. Complete to Jefferson. First down on his way. And that might be the knockout punch.
And the greatest season in college football history was born. The whole time, everyone was talking about Joe Burrow and Joe Brady, and Ensminger never wanted the praise that season. In December 28th, 2019, Carly McCord, Steve Ensminger's daughter-in-law, died in a plane crash while on her way to the Peach Bowl in Atlanta to see LSU play Oklahoma in the national semifinals. Ensminger kept the news to himself and to Coach O, all the while consoling his son over the phone right before the game. A few hours later, Steve Ensminger called one of the greatest games in the history of college football. 7 touchdown passes and 49 points in the first half against the number 4 ranked Oklahoma Sooners. And he didn't tell any of his players what he was going through. He had a job to do, and he didn't ask pity from anyone because the Tigers needed him. This season, which will be his last as a play caller, Ensminger had more passing yards and touchdowns through the first 3 games than they did in the 2019 season. Miles Brennan gets hurt, players opt out, and all that is left are 2 freshman quarterbacks, a 3rd-string freshman tight end, and one of the worst offensive lines in the SEC that didn't even get a full offseason of practice, and they still broke school records. A source came out today and said that Steve Ensminger, if he wanted to return as LSU's offensive coordinator in 2021, he could have, but it was his decision. Ensminger should enjoy retirement. He earned it. Now he gets what he wants to be. Semi-retired, old assistant at his alma mater in his hometown. But this time, everyone will notice him. Everyone should notice him. Steve Ensminger, the greatest offensive coordinator in LSU football history. Thanks for listening to Out of My League. If you like what you heard, be sure to like, share, and subscribe, or follow me on Twitter at @TheNickDiaz.